In 618 AD, the Emperor of China banned the most important food system his civilization had ever built. Not because it was dangerous, not because it had failed, because his family name, Li, was the same word as the common carp. And allowing his subjects to farm and eat a creature that shared his name was, in his judgment, beneath the dignity of the throne. The ban covered every province, every village pond. Every family that had fed itself on carp for 1,000 years overnight lost its primary protein source. What happened next was not famine. What happened next was the most important accidental innovation in the history of food production. Forced to find alternatives, Chinese farmers began raising 4 species of fish simultaneously in the same water. Mud carp that fed on bottom sediments, silver carp that filtered algae in the middle water column, grass carp that consumed surface vegetation, bighead carp that ate zooplankton, each species occupying a different layer of the pond, each one eating what the others ignored. No competition, no waste. A stacked, self-regulating biological machine that produced more protein per square foot than anything that had come before and asked almost nothing in return. The emperor's ban, intended to protect his pride, created the world's first true polyculture system. A system so productive, so self-sustaining, that versions of it fed Chinese villages for the next 14 centuries without anyone adding feed, without permits, without infrastructure of any kind. And then it came to America and disappeared, not because it failed, not because something better replaced it, because the $200 billion industrial meat industry that replaced it had no interest in a system that made you permanently, quietly, completely independent of everything it was selling. Today, we are going to rebuild it. By the time this video ends, you will understand exactly how a backyard pond smaller than a shipping container can produce more protein per year than a quarter acre of cattle pasture. How a system banned by an emperor, refined over 2,000 years, and buried by an industry that profits from your dependence can be installed on your property this season for under $600, and why once it is established, it will keep producing fish, eggs, clean water, and sovereignty for the rest of your life. But first, you need to understand how deep this knowledge actually goes. Before we dive in, comment where you are watching from and click subscribe. The story does not start with the emperor's ban. It starts much earlier. In 475 BC, a Chinese statesman named Fan Li wrote a treatise called the Yang Yu Jing, the classic of fish farming, the first documented manual for managed aquaculture in human history. His core insight was this: a pond is not a container for fish, it is a living system. And a living system, managed correctly, produces food indefinitely without consuming itself. That insight spread. By the Han Dynasty, fish ponds were so common across southern China that chroniclers described them as a defining feature of the landscape. Some were centuries old, still producing thousands of pounds of protein every year. Nobody was adding feed. The ponds were feeding themselves through the same closed-loop biology Fan Li had described centuries earlier. Then came the emperor's ban, and instead of collapsing, the system evolved. The 4-species polyculture that necessity created was more productive than anything before it. By the time Marco Polo arrived in China in the 13th century, he documented village fish ponds so abundant and so ancient that local farmers could not remember a time before them. It never made it to America in any meaningful way. When European settlers arrived, they brought cattle, pigs, and chickens, animals that required constant feeding, fencing, and management. A pond that fed itself seemed too simple, almost primitive. What it actually was a level of biological intelligence that Western agriculture has never matched. In the 1960s, researchers at Auburn University in Alabama finally began studying what the Chinese had known for 2 millennia. Fishery scientists led by H.S. Swingle built test ponds as small as 1,000 square feet and stocked them using ancient polyculture techniques. The results were not subtle. Auburn documented yields of up to 350 pounds of fish from ponds of just 1,000 square feet. A quarter acre of cattle pasture produces roughly 200 pounds of beef per year, requires constant feeding, veterinary care, and significant infrastructure. These small ponds produce nearly double the protein in a tenth of the space with almost zero inputs. The studies were published, they were cited by a handful of permaculture researchers, and then the momentum stopped. No government subsidies, no extension office programs, no agricultural colleges teaching it, because the moment a family installs a productive pond in their backyard, they stop buying protein from the industrial system. And the industrial meat system in America, valued at $200 billion annually, has never had any incentive to hand you a manual for making yourself independent of it. The knowledge survived the way it always survives, in the margins, in the notes of homesteaders, in permaculture design courses, in old university research that nobody promoted because nobody profitable wanted it promoted. Until now. Here is how the system actually works, and I want you to understand this not as a set of instructions, but as a biology, because once you see the logic, you will never look at a pond the same way again. The system has 4 components. Each one feeds the others. None of them work in isolation. Component 1, the fish. For most of the United States, channel catfish and bluegill are your foundation species. They are legal in virtually every state, cold hardy, and between them, they replicate the layered feeding ecology that the Tang Dynasty farmers discovered by accident. Bluegill are the slow play. Stock them once and they reproduce on their own, creating a self-replenishing population that requires zero management. They reach harvestable size, 6 to 8 inches, in roughly 2 years. After that, your pond produces bluegill indefinitely without a single fingerling purchase. Channel catfish are the fast return. They reach 1 to 2 pounds within 18 months in a well-managed pond, grow year-round in warmer climates, and taste like something you would pay $12 a pound for at a restaurant. Stock them at roughly 50 fingerlings per 1,000 square feet of water. If your climate allows it, and you check your state regulations first, tilapia are in a category of their own. Under optimal conditions, they reach 1 pound in 5 to 6 months. A small pond stocked with 50 tilapia fingerlings in spring can yield 40 to 50 pounds of harvestable fish before the first frost. The catch: tilapia are banned in some states because they can establish wild populations in warm water. Check before you buy. The species combination matters because it replicates the layered polyculture that makes the system self-sustaining. Different fish feeding at different depths, consuming different food sources, producing waste that fertilizes the next link in the chain. Component 2, the ducks. This is the part most backyard pond guides miss entirely, and it is the part that transforms a fish pond into a closed-loop ecosystem. In traditional Chinese polyculture, waterfowl were always integrated. Always, not as an afterthought, as biological infrastructure. When ducks swim, they stir up bottom sediments, releasing nutrients into the water column. When they defecate, and they do so constantly and prolifically, they add nitrogen directly into the system. That nitrogen feeds algae. The algae feeds zooplankton. The zooplankton feeds small fish. The small fish feed larger fish. And the ducks eat insects, aquatic plants, and small organisms, foraging up to 30% of their nutritional needs directly from the pond ecosystem. You are feeding the ducks. The ducks are feeding the pond. The pond is feeding the fish. The fish are feeding you. There is no waste in this loop. Every input cycles back as output. Khaki Campbell ducks are the standard recommendation for this system, and they lay between 280 and 340 eggs per year per bird. 3 ducks will give you somewhere between 840 and 1,020 eggs annually, roughly 70 to 85 eggs per month. More than most families can eat, enough to sell, trade, or give away while the pond produces your protein. 3 ducks. No feed bill to speak of. 70 eggs a month. A pond that fertilizes itself. That is not a side benefit. That is the system working exactly as Fan Li described it, working 2,400 years ago. Component 3, the plants. Aquatic vegetation is not decoration. It is the filtration system, the oxygen supply, and the food web foundation of everything else. Cattails planted around the shallow edges of your pond are among the most efficient biological filters on Earth. Their roots pull nitrogen and phosphorus out of the water column, preventing the algae blooms that can crash a pond ecosystem. They are doing the work of a mechanical filter that would cost hundreds of dollars and require power to run, for free, indefinitely, while providing habitat for beneficial insects and frogs that add another layer to your food web. Water lilies provide surface shade, which lowers water temperature in summer, reduces evaporation, and creates refuge zones where fish can shelter. Submerged plants like hornwort release oxygen during daylight hours, critical for fish health in warm weather when dissolved oxygen levels drop. And then there is duckweed. Under optimal conditions, duckweed doubles its biomass in less than 48 hours. It absorbs nutrients so efficiently that wastewater treatment facilities use it. Your ducks will eat it as fast as it grows. It costs nothing. It solves your nitrogen problem and your duck feed problem simultaneously. A surface covered in duckweed is a pond in balance. Research in controlled aquaponic systems, which are essentially polyculture in a tank, has shown that well-selected aquatic plants can remove up to 90% of the nitrogen waste produced by fish. The plants absorb it. The water stays clean. The fish stay healthy. You do almost nothing. Component 4, the bacteria. Invisible, unglamorous, and more important than everything else combined. Beneficial bacteria colonize every surface of your pond. Liner, rocks, plant roots, sediment, and convert fish waste ammonia into nitrites, then into nitrates that plants can absorb. This nitrogen cycle is the backbone of the entire system. It is what makes the loop close. Without it, ammonia accumulates, fish die, and you have an expensive hole in the ground. The good news? You cannot build this component. You can only provide the conditions for it and wait. It establishes itself within 4 to 6 weeks of introducing water and plants. After that, it balances the system automatically for as long as the pond exists. This is biological engineering that has been running continuously in Chinese village ponds for over 1,000 years. You are not inventing it. You are installing it, Now let's talk about how to actually build this. Location first. Find the lowest natural point on your property, where water already collects after rain. You want at least 6 hours of sunlight daily, but not full south-facing exposure that would overheat the water in summer. Work with your land's natural contours, not against them. Size. For a family-scale protein system, 10 feet by 15 feet, 4 to 5 feet deep at the center. That is 150 square feet of surface area and roughly 3,000 to 4,000 gallons of water. You can dig this by hand over a weekend or rent a small excavator for an afternoon. Create a shallow shelf, 1 foot deep, 2 to 3 feet wide, around the perimeter. This is your plant zone. The deeper center is where fish will refuge during temperature extremes. If your soil is heavy clay, line the pond with 6 inches of compacted wet clay. The same method used in Chinese village ponds for millennia, still effective, costs nothing. If your soil is sandy or rocky, use an EPDM rubber liner. It lasts 20 to 30 years and costs roughly $1 to $2 per square foot. Fill with water. If using municipal water, let it sit for 1 week for chlorine to off-gas before introducing life. Then introduce life in stages. This is where most people make the mistake that costs them their first season. Weeks 1 and 2, plants only, cattails and irises on the shallow shelf, hornwort in the deeper sections, duckweed and water lettuce floating on the surface. Let them root. Let bacterial colonization begin on every surface. Weeks 3 and 4, add your ducks, 2 to 5 for a pond this size. Watch the water cloud slightly as they stir the bottom. This is correct. This is the pond activating, month 2. Introduce your fish. 50 fingerlings per 1,000 square feet. They will disappear into the depths. Do not add more. They are growing in the cool water below the surface, and you will not see them for weeks. For the next 6 months, you do almost nothing. Check water clarity. Pull excess duckweed if it covers more than 70% of the surface. Top off water levels during dry spells. That is the entirety of your management. By month 6, you will see silver flashes near the surface. Your fish are visible now and approaching harvestable size. By the end of year 1, depending on species, you will have your first harvest. The ducks will have been laying for 5 to 6 months. 3 ducks will have given you somewhere between 500 and 700 eggs in their first year alone. Year 2, if you left a breeding population of bluegill, they have reproduced on their own. You have more fish than you started with, and you bought nothing. The ducks keep laying. The plants have expanded to fill their zones. The bacterial colonies are fully established, and the nitrogen cycle runs without your intervention. Year 3, you are not managing a project. You are harvesting from a living system that has woven itself into your land and will keep running, keep producing, keep improving for as long as you are there to collect from it. Here's what most guides skip because it complicates the story. This system takes time to establish, and the first season will test your patience. The pond will go through an ugly phase in weeks 3 through 6. The water will turn green with algae as the ecosystem finds its balance. Resist the urge to intervene. Do not add chemicals. Do not drain and refill. This is the biological negotiation that every new pond goes through, and it resolves on its own as plants and bacteria establish. A pond that looks terrible in week 4 often looks perfect by month 3. Your first fish harvest will be smaller than you expect. The numbers above are what a well-established system produces. Year 1 is establishment. Year 2 is the first real harvest. Year 3 is when the system earns its keep without your effort. The duck management is real work. Ducks are not chickens. They are messy, they need water access daily, and in winter they need shelter from wind even if they do not need warmth. A simple 3-sided structure with straw bedding handles winter, but they are a daily commitment in a way that the pond itself is not. Finally, check your local regulations before purchasing fish. Catfish and bluegill are legal in virtually every state. Tilapia are banned in several. This takes 1 search and 15 minutes. Do it before you buy fingerlings, not after. 10 years from now, food prices will be higher. Protein prices specifically, already among the fastest rising categories in the grocery store, will be noticeably, unavoidably higher. The supply chains that move meat from industrial feedlots to your refrigerator will have absorbed enough fuel cost, labor cost, and climate disruption that the number at the checkout will carry all of it. Your neighbors will feel that in ways they cannot fully articulate. Some will have started gardens. Almost none of them will have built what you built. You will walk out to your pond in the early morning. The surface still, covered in a layer of duckweed, your ducks will clear by midday. You will cast a line and pull a catfish that has never seen a feedlot, never been treated with antibiotics, never traveled 1,200 miles in a refrigerated truck. You will collect a basket of eggs from 3 ducks that have been feeding themselves for a decade on a pond ecosystem that feeds itself. And you will understand standing there what family understood 2,400 years ago, what the Tang Dynasty farmers discovered by accident when an emperor's pride forced them to innovate. What Auburn University proved in a test pond the size of a shipping container and then watched get quietly buried by an industry that could not afford for you to know it. You do not need their supply chains. You do not need their feedlots or their antibiotics or their refrigerated trucks or their $15 a pound fish that was alive on the other side of the planet 2 weeks ago. You need water, sunlight, a hole in the ground, and the patience to let 2,000 years of biological intelligence do what it was always designed to do. This is not a hobby. This is not a project. It is a system that was banned by an emperor, survived 14 centuries, and is waiting to be installed on your land this season for less than the cost of 1 month of grocery bills. The knowledge has always been here. The pond is waiting. If this opens something for you, if you can picture yourself standing at that water in 10 years, subscribe so you don't miss the next system we uncover. Share this with someone who's ready to stop depending on systems they cannot control. The knowledge is here. The choice is yours.